Pacers no longer undefeated, dropping a home game to the Chicago Bulls. The slow pace got to them. The bad shooting got to them. The isolation defense got to them. We'll break it all down today on the Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Tuesday, everybody, and welcome into another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers. As always, my name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes and SI, and today, Pacers, Bulls breaking it down. Pacers in the loss column officially this season. Bulls take them down 112-105. Kind of a strange game from a feeling perspective. I'll explain why before breaking it down. Pacers, a couple things mainly go wrong, I think, to be the focuses today, and that would be, first of all, a detraction from both things I talked about yesterday. Their depth was not a huge advantage, and their assists were not insane as they were in the first two games. Sometimes I mess up, and I did this time, even though those things were great in the first games. Also, isolation defense, threes not falling, big issues, fouls were a problem in this one, and the pace, I think, was the big one that I don't leave with. Plus some things that did go well in this game. It wasn't all bad. This game was weird, though, like I said, and that's kind of where I want to start because I don't even know how to describe this. A lot of people watched it, although there were some Bally issues I heard for others trying to watch it. But the game was never farther away than 8 points. Like, the margin never got to double figures all game, right? So that's a tight game for 48 minutes. Usually a game like that is like tense or tight, or it feels like, you know, there's just like a lot of push and pull. It did not feel that way at all. It didn't feel tense hardly ever until the last couple minutes. Like it kind of always felt like the Bulls were playing their game and the Pacers weren't, and the Pacers were just keeping up, and that's fine. The Pacers just beat the Cavs playing that exact way, but it made it feel weird. It didn't feel like a 48-minute wire-to-wire close game. It felt much different than that. This game, though, was strange, and I think my big takeaway from the Pacers' perspective in this loss would be this is the second straight game for a lot of the game. Didn't feel like they were playing their game, for lack of a better term. I mean, this game was kind of slow, right? The Bulls' average seconds per possession was almost 15 seconds. That's slow, and that's not fast versus slow possessions is not a bad thing, but that's the way the Bulls want to play. They want the game to be at that pace. They want to take their time. They want to get to their shot, and they did that this game. The Bulls only took 17 threes. That's crazy in the current NBA. That's what the Pacers want. They want to take away threes from other teams, and so the Bulls took their time, hunted to get inside, and took a bunch of twos and got to the foul line 31 times. That led to a really slow game in general. The Pacers' pace on offense itself wasn't so bad. Their seconds per possession was 13.5, which is close-ish to where they are when they're playing fast. But in general, the game felt sluggish and slower than it usually does. But the Pacers still tried to get their shots up, it felt like to me, earlier in the clock sometimes, which again can be fine if you're fighting against a tilted defense, but that just led to a little bit more forcing it than we're accustomed to, right? So we'll talk about those shots in a moment, but I really want to talk about is this is the second straight game we've seen this where the other team is dictating the pace and not the Pacers. It's always funny talking about pace with the Pacers. Pacers' pace is still high this season. Like if you look at the league's advanced stats and sort by pace, they're still in the top half. Their pace against the Bulls was still really high. But the seconds per possession numbers show that there were some slower moments in this game that really made it hard for the Pacers to play their game in a way that is pretty significant for the style they want. And when they're not whipping it up and down and they can't get into the style that we talked about on yesterday's show, right, where the ball's popping and everybody's moving and the assists are crazy, you look a little bit more like this if you're the Pacers, where getting the shot you want takes a lot more work, right? And that whether that was a three or at the rim, whatever, it took a lot more effort for the Pacers to do it. Like Caruso was really blowing them up when they were trying to get into their early stuff. Drummond was doing a good job down low, fighting with guys. Javon Carter was disrupting stuff early in plays, right? All that stuff mattered in a way that really disrupted the Pacers stylistically. And so the biggest takeaway I had is that the Pacers need to find a way in a game like that to speed things up, get into their stuff earlier, get moving earlier. And there's two ways that were key when talking to players after the game to kind of do that. Number one is what Rick Carlisle said, and this is the most obvious one. Get some stops, right? Stop the other team from scoring, get a rebound, boom, transition, or get a steal or something. And the Pacers weren't like awful in either of these departments. in this game. The rebounding battle was 44-47. Pacers actually won on the glass, right? They did a good job there. They had more defensive rebounds. They didn't get killed there, but they didn't do enough of the stops. The Bulls shot 46% from the field and made 26 free throws. That's pretty good. That's 5% better from the field and 5 more free throws, right? It's just going to slow the game down when you're taking the ball out of the net, and the Pacers took the ball out of the net 66 times. That's a lot. That's going to slow things down. For reference, the Bulls only took the ball out of the net 57 times, right? So that alone would help the Pacers. More stops, more steals, and stuff like that. Low turnovers for the Bulls, only 13. Only 7 steals for the Pacers in this game, right? So all those things add up to say part one of playing faster is the obvious transition stuff, the stuff that when people think of playing fast, this is the first thing that teams think about. The open floor, flying up and down, basically what the Pacers did against the Wizards for like the last 35 minutes of the game. Just speed, go, let's go, shove it, then you throw it. The second thing is early offense, right? And the Pacers sometimes do this off makes where they'll just throw it in and fly up the floor as fast as they can. And sometimes as soon as they get across half court, there's a screener ready or there's a ghost screen ready that they're just floating right into the second side. They're running the pick and roll, whatever they do it fast. But the Bulls, they're a good defensive team. They're well principled there. They mix in these funky matchup zones to start some possessions, or they have Alex Caruso or Javon Carter just right up on this ball handler's face, right in his way, making things much harder than they typically can be for that player. These are all things that that are difficult to deal with, right? And so the Pacers were struggling to kind of deal with that. So there's a couple creative ways to kind of combat that. One could be lineups with 2 ball handlers. Now that actually didn't work very well for the Pacers in this game. And that is a big takeaway to me as well, is the Nembhard plus Halliburton groups in this game where I think would be a good solution given what you think the Pacers would need in this one. Were not very good in this game. They actually kind of struggled quite a bit in a way that would have been helpful for the Pacers to get an advantage, right? If you look at just raw plus minus, which is never the best stat, but it can be reflective, not predictive. Tyrese Halliburton played 36 minutes. Pacers won those minutes by 2. Andrew Nembhard played 21 minutes and 16 seconds. Pacers lost those minutes by 2. That's dead even. The Pacers lost this game by 7, which means the minutes with them together are where things got kind of awry. And so that was problematic, even though it seems like it should be pretty beneficial given what I just said. Excuse me. In general, though, 2 ball handlers can help. Or in this case, when there's Javon Carter and an Alex Caruso on the other side, perhaps a third guy out there to relieve even more of that pressure could be helpful. And it's a little like Mathurin did not have a single assist in this game. His passing was not awesome. Bruce Brown only 1 assist in this game. He had some nice passes, but they weren't the shooters who actually made the shots. We'll talk about. I mean, I could just be talking about all this process stuff, but they didn't make shots. Like at some point, that is just the answer, is just make them. Like they weren't passing as crisply as they were in other games. And so even when they overloaded the ball handlers, that didn't help as much. Buddy Hield did some second side assist stuff in this game, but Nembhard only had 2 assists, right? He did not have a good game. Nembhard's early fourth quarter was really rough. So the easy counters to a team that's going to pressure like that and make it hard to get going early is just more ball handlers, other guys who can initiate, and they couldn't do that. They couldn't quite figure it out. And so my biggest takeaway from this game is kind of a continuation of something that happened against the Cavs, and that's the Pacers couldn't play their style. They couldn't play their game, and that's something they want to do. That's something they leaned into with their additions this summer. This is the blueprint, I think, for teams to try to beat them. Make the game ugly and slow. Not ugly. It wasn't an ugly game, but make the game slow, bogged down, and just do your stuff. And so the Bulls could just come down, make or miss, run their ISO with DeRozan or Levine, or get Kobe White flying when they need to every so often, or whatever they could set up. They had time to do it. They played their game, and they beat the Pacers. So I think it's going to be crucial for the Pacers to try to figure out. This was the first thing Bruce Brown said after the game, right? Him and Halliburton were the podium guys today. Well, first, Bruce Brown said, honestly, I think we just missed shots, which we'll talk about in a second. But then he said the team didn't play up to their speed, right? And so for a team that wants to run and wants to push the pace all the time, they knew after the game, we didn't do that. We didn't play as fast as we want. We weren't, the up-tempo team that makes teams react to us. And I think that cost them in this game. And they'll know that, which will be helpful going forward. But you can't get a game back. They've got to be better about being proactive about their speed. And they're playing a very hard test to figure that out on Wednesday with the Celtics. I want to talk more about some other stuff that went wrong in this game. And wrong, though. The shooting was horrible. We'll talk about that in the next segment as well. Some other struggle areas for the Pacers before we do that, though, I would like to talk to you guys about the lovely people over at FanDuel who can help you score early this NFL season with FanDuel. They are America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers on FanDuel get $150 in bonus bets. That's a lot. By winning any $5 moneyline bet. All you do, place that $5 moneyline bet, you win $150, boom, in bonus bets. Your team's got to win. And if you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there is no better time to get in on the action than right now. NFL rolling, World Series going on, NBA is back. It's the best time. The app is super easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options. They've got your spreads, your over-unders, your player props, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to kick off the NFL season with FanDuel, an official partner of the NBA and NFL. Thank you, as always, for making Locked On Pacers our first listen today and every single day. For your second listen, Locked On NBA. Why? Because I was on it. I hosted a fun array of games last night, plus more James Harden stuff, plus the courts. There's new courts. I can't make a segment out of that for the Pacers show, so I'll just say it right now. They have a new court for their in-season tournament games. It is very cerulean and yellow. It is something. It's going to be very interesting to see what it looks like in person. The league really going in on bold for these in-season tournament games to make them stand out as its own unique product, which I think is a good idea. This might be a little too bold for my taste, but we'll see. Maybe in person it looks great and looks unique. More Pacers Bulls. Pacers losing this one. And the second thing I think was a key story, at least from my end, what I wanted to ask players about after the game was the shooting. 12 for 46 from deep. Not what you want to see. The Bulls took 17 threes. The Pacers took 46, and the Bulls made half as many. They shot 9% better from three. And so even though they made way fewer, right? The Pacers technically had 18 more points from deep. Their efficiency was way higher, the Bulls were. Now, here's the thing. I have said this in the preseason. I said this after the first two regular season games. To me, the Pacers' shots from three are still mostly good. Like they're open, or it's a guy you want to shoot, even if there's like someone kind of close to him, like Buddy Hield, right? In general, I am a fan of the shots the Pacers are taking from long range. If you told me they take 46 threes in a game, the expectation would be that Turner and Halliburton are a big number of those, and Hield is a big number of those. Those three combined took 24, over half of them. If you include Bruce Brown, that's 30 of the 46. Those are the guys you want to shoot them. Miles Turner made 3 of 8. That's great. Bruce Brown made 3 of 6. That's great. Buddy Hield made 3 of 8. That's great. Everybody else on the team made 3 total, right? And so the role guys, not even necessarily the role guys, Mathurin's more than a role guy, Nembhard's more than a role guy, but those guys just couldn't make anything. After his huge game on Saturday, Aaron Nesmith 1 for 4 from deep after a really strong start. Jalen Smith was 0 for 2 from deep. Nembhard was 0 for 4, including some ugly ones. He had 2 that were super deep. Andrew Nembhard took the first 3 that made me jot a note about their shot selection. He took one that was so far that I just thought, that I'm not sure is the shot that they actually want in this game, right? And they had a couple more of those. But Obi Toppin 0 for 2, Ben Mathurin 1 for 4. So their best shooters, usually, outside of Halliburton, were good shooters in this game. Halliburton really struggled. He was 1 for 8. And then the rest of their guys made 3 total combined. They need to be better, a little bit better about their shot selection, right? This game was the first time I think they took some that I found perplexing. Some were rushed in quality. I think Bruce Brown had 1 or 2 that I didn't really care for. Nembhard, like I just said, did. Some were rushed in terms of time left on the clock. You could probably get a better shot with a little bit of waiting. But this game, the old adage comes out, and this is the lazy way of describing it, but live by the 3, die by the 3, right? If they make 20 like they did on opening night, you're going to win a lot. If they take 46 of them and shoot 26%, they're going to lose a lot. And that's not to say that's just how it is. They have to be either more selective with their shots or have the right guys taking them. But in this one, they did have the right guys taking them. They just need to be a little more selective or generate a few more open ones because they had a couple that were too tough to make to me. And I think that was a big part of the Pacers' struggles in this game is the threes they took, the ability to actually knock those shots down. The other big problem area of this game, to me, isolation defense. Man, I mean, these guys are, you can see where their scheme is helping them. Like I said, the Bulls only took 17 threes. That's good. The Pacers were in this because even when a rock fight like this happens, they could play through the 3 versus 2 game. Well, the problem is they couldn't actually get the 3 very often, but that worked out for them for long enough in this game, but they could not stop these isolations. The Bulls were running a lot of the same play late to try to target Halliburton. That was working for them. getting to the rim or drawing fouls. And in general, LaVine and DeRozan, they're two top-tier ISO guys. They spent some time being guarded by Mathurin. They spent some time being guarded by Bruce Brown, some time with Nesmith, some time with Nembhard, some time with Halburn. Like I said, didn't really matter, right? In general, from the field, the Pacers did a good job slowing them down. 6 for 17 for LaVine, 6 for 19 for DeRozan. DeRozan had 2 points at halftime. Mathurin contained him pretty well in that way. They weren't fouling him very much up to that point. But eventually those guys can just kind of be off the dribble or get to their spot. And the Pacers did not do a good job slowing them down at all, both in terms of actually stopping them at the rim. Right? They shot better in the second half and at the basket than in the first half, but also by getting to the line. Those two combined were 18 of 19 from the foul line. The Pacers' whole team made 21 free throws. Those two are almost all the way there themselves. And that was huge. If you include Vucevic, the big three for the Bulls, DeMar, Vooch, and LaVine, those three had more free throws made than the Pacers, right? So the ISO defense was really rough in this one, especially late. Like when the Pacers were trying to mount this comeback and get back into it after giving the lead away with just a few minutes to go, they couldn't get stops. They just couldn't get hardly any stops, and that was brutal. And that was right after a stretch of about 8 minutes from the late third to the mid fourth where the Pacers couldn't score, right? So they toggled between poor offense to poor defense in a way that didn't work for them, right? 4:58 to go. It was 95-97. Pacers winning when this game crosses into winning time. Oh, well, I guess 2 seconds they weren't. So the last 5 minutes, the Pacers were ahead, and then the rest of the game, the Bulls scored 17 points, and the Pacers scored 10, and that's how you win. But the Pacers just couldn't stop them. 17 points in 5 minutes to close this game out is very impressive by the Bulls, scoring almost every possession. In fact, they went from 95 to 105 very quickly. They went from 95 to 101 in about a minute, right? So that's 6 points in a minute that really turned the game, and the Pacers couldn't get those stops. So their ISO defense was rough. They have been playing a lot of, at least in camp, they were doing this one-on-one drill to work on that. They talk about guarding your yard. Talking about it doesn't matter. If you can't actually do it in the games, they got to be better at these things, and it was really killer for them. There's 2 ways to go about this and try to get better. Well, there's 3. One of the 3 is work on your skills, get better. Okay, well, the game is over. What else can you do? You can help more and earlier, right? If a guy's getting beat or it looks like he might get beat, try to help, and especially try to help in a way that makes it so you're not getting beat on the backside of the play or someone else doesn't have to help. Do your best to slow down the guy in isolation who's about to cook somebody, and while also being able to stop your own man, right? Help defense can get a little better. That's part of how I phrased my question about the ISO defense in the game is like, do you need to send more help? Do you need to be in more rotation? Like, how do you slow that down when the other team is just destroying you in that way over and over? And the other way is just totally preventative, right? Don't let the other team get into a situation where they're ISOing against the defender they consider to be weak, right? They got a lot of Halliburton ones late. They got it on some other guys earlier in the game. No problem. Those guys, LaVine and DeRozan in particular, had no problem scoring, right? If you can prevent the switch from happening in a way that gets to a matchup that the Bulls like or whoever in the future likes, that's another way to get out of those situations that the Pacers were not able to do in this game for one reason or another. That whether that's good Vucevic screening, whether that's any number of things going on, an early switch away from the ball. There's a lot of ways that can happen, but preventing it from happening or at least limiting it is another way to have this happen. And none of those things happened in this game. So the Pacers couldn't get the crucial stops when they needed it. They couldn't keep the Bulls off the line. And that's a loss, right? This is some of the stuff we talked about in the preseason coming for the Pacers. The fouls, 24 fouls. The threes, they took a lot. That's fine, but they missed a lot in this one, right? That was a lot of the key early before the regular season topics. And they came back for the Pacers in this one in a way. And the defense, of course, still a concern at this point. 112 is not that much to give up, right? But 112 when the other team only takes 17 threes in the current NBA and does not dominate the possession battle is kind of a lot to give up. So Pacers got to clean that stuff up, right? They showed some holes today. The blueprint to beating them has certainly been slowing them down. And that is loss number 1 for the Pacers, who have a very tough opponent coming up on Wednesday in the Boston Celtics. We'll talk more about that on tomorrow's show. But I want to close out today's show with some other thoughts from this game, including some stuff that went maybe a little bit better than I have led on during this episode. Before we do that, though, I want to talk about the Gametime app. Ticket buying should not be a frustrating experience. And I can tell you the Gametime app makes it an awesome and enjoyable experience. I used the Gametime app when I was in New York City to buy tickets to a Liberty game. It was fantastic. It was super easy. Didn't have to worry at all. Did it the day before with no issues. Got to see the view from my seats before I bought them. It is fantastic with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, and that view from your seat. Gametime's the way to go. They've got a best price guarantee, so it's called the Gametime guarantee. You'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less money, Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. Plus, they've got deals right up until the start of the event. They have exclusive flash deals. They have zone deals. You can see that view from your seat, like I said, and they're all in prices. Meaning you know what you're getting. That's the way to go. Buy your tickets in 2 taps on the Gametime app. Download it, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off on your first purchase. Some terms apply, but again, create an account, use that code LOCKEDONNBA, LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Thank you, as always, for making Locked On Pacers your first listen today and every single day. For your second listen, jump on over to Locked On Bulls. Hear about the other side of the coin. Bulls get up to 2-2 after a needed win for them. Their wins have been holding on for dear life at the end. They escaped the Raptors and beat the Pacers, holding on for dear life at the end of this one. Not the greatest performance from any particular Pacer. No one really explodes off the page, but it wasn't all bad. They rebounded pretty well in a way that was encouraging to me. Second straight 20-10 double-double for Miles Turner. I will start with him. His matchup with Vucevic is really fascinating to me, right? They are both kind of exactly the prototype of the hardest player for that player to guard, right? Miles Turner struggles with strong post bigs who can keep him buried under the rim, right? And Vooch can do that. He catches at the high post. He takes 2 dribbles backwards, and boom, Miles Turner is compromised. He can't be Miles Turner protecting the rim, and he has to try to guard this really strong dude who just moved him 10 feet, right? So that's kind of always been a tough matchup for him. Vucevic was 10 for 19 from the field. He did a great job. A lot of his makes were off of his own offensive rebounds as well. Meanwhile, Vucevic is slow, so he can't keep up with spaced out bigs who can put the ball on the floor. And guess what? Miles Turner can do those things. So against each other, they always seem to have big games because just statistically, that's how it works out. Vooch had 24 and 17. Turner had 20 and 11. So Turner actually played all right. But he had some clunky free throws early, and he missed a few that I definitely think you would want back around the rim. The shooting from 3 certainly helped, but Vucevic was the better of those 2 matchups, despite Turner having another big statistical game. Obi Toppin was good on the glass. I thought that was pretty important. A lot of people asking about his minutes in this game, which I truly didn't notice he wasn't in that much. He didn't close the game again. He was a +9 in his minutes, though. He was good on the glass. He hit 2 of his 5 shots. I think they were turning to defense late in this game is why he didn't close. Aaron Nesmith was in there. Again, Aaron Nesmith closed against the Cavs as well. The way Nesmith has defended this season makes a lot of sense. They're basically closing with the starters from last year. This time, Mathurin was in at the close of the game. But I thought Toppin played all right. I thought he was fitting in a little bit more in this one. And the thing that's been interesting with Obi Toppin specifically is he has been billed as this great player for the Pacers because he fits their identity so well, right? When the Pacers play fast, Obi Toppin's awesome when he plays fast. And we've seen that happen, especially in their first game. Well, these last 2 opponents have slowed the game down in a way that makes it harder for Obi Toppin to shine in those moments. So he has to find other ways to contribute. The biggest one has definitely been the rebounding, right? Absolutely. He's been good on the glass. That's something Rick Carlisle's challenged him to do. And I think that's been where he's contributed. He had 8 in this game. He's got to be a little more accurate. He's got to be a little better defensively, but I loved the reverse tip slam. It really turned the momentum of the game. 2-handed reverse tip slam. I don't think I said this to Dustin Opierak during the game. I don't think I've ever seen that before. A player missed. Obi Toppin flew in from the baseline, jumped from the other side of the basket, and then caught the ball with 2 hands and did a 2-hand reverse tip slam over his own head. It was sick. It was unbelievable. He can just do stuff that no one else can do. Anyway, he was all right in this game. Mathurin got back to his roots getting to the foul line, right? 4 for 11, but still having 15 points is the most Ben Mathurin scoring line ever. But his passing has slowly deteriorated since the early start. 0 assists in this one, only 1, I believe, against the Cavs. So that's something to keep an eye on is him being Ben Mathurin the scorer really hard for him to also be Ben Mathurin the passer? Can he find a way to blend them like he did on opening night? Bruce Brown had a really good game, at least statistically, but defensively, I think DeRozan's a tough one for him, just from a size perspective. And he couldn't, he had a lot of good passes. I truly think he did. But he only had 1 assist because guys were not making the shots from his passes. He had a couple of nice cross-court ones, getting guys shots from the corners. But I thought Bruce Brown played a nice game, despite the plus-minus numbers not saying so. He did struggle with DeRozan a few times in that matchup, though. And the other guy I want to talk about a little bit more, Jalen Smith. I did a full segment on Jalen Smith in the preseason already, on him earning the backup center job. It was the last preseason podcast, actually. And he's been making his twos, was a big point I made there, and he's been a little better on defense. Well, Rick Carlisle told us before the game that defensive growth in large part comes from a ton of work this summer. He said he thinks Jalen Smith was one of the guys who was with the Pacers the most, right, in the summer, like in Indy, not necessarily with the Pacers, in Indy the most, like getting the work in, improving, and all that sort of stuff. He got a lot better, and on that defensive end, you can see it. And he did it again in this game. He made his twos, 4 for 5 on twos. He was a little less effective on the glass in this one, and we were going against Andre Drummond. That's going to happen. Drummond just boxes you out and moves you 10 feet every time. But making his twos, playing good defense, he had a block and a steal, very rarely turning it over. Jalen Smith continues to impress. He has earned the backup 5 minutes. And now, after seeing what he did to Mobley, after seeing how well he played in this game, this was his worst game, and he still was good. And after how well he played against the Wizards, like he could have a couple bad games in a row. And I still think they would continue to roll with him as the backup 5 because he's earned that time. He's played very well in every game. And another skill that he's gotten a lot better at, someone messaged me about this during the game, his screen setting is way better, right? He got a little jittery last year. This year he's making contact, right? It's a little bigger frame, has gone a long way. They had some guys with stinky nights. Andrew Nembhard in the early fourth quarter was really struggling. Neesmith's shot was not falling. Buddy Hield was not making his 2-pointers. Halliburton was not making his 3-pointers, right? They just had a lot of stuff that you can't have all of that happen in a game and expect to win. And all of them did happen in this game. I think the Pacers truly, though, this will sound stupid, but if you ever follow those accounts that do like shot quality graphs for soccer games, right, or expected goals, like if you played this game 100 times with the shot quality of each team, I think the Pacers might win over half of them. If you look at PBP stats, tracks this during a game, shot quality, Pacers expected effective field goal percentage, 54.4. Bulls was 50.5. The Pacers' true shooting percentage was bad because they didn't actually make those shots, right? The Pacers had a better 2-point percentage by a mile, 57% for the Pacers, only 48% for the Bulls, but the Bulls had the better 3-point percentage and lived at the line. All this to say, the Pacers got better shots, right? That's 83% of the Pacers shots were at the rim or threes. 55.2% of the Bulls shots were in those ranges. The Bulls shot pretty well from 4 to 14 feet and 14 feet to the 3-point line, and they made it a little bit better. They made a lot of shots at the rim despite shooting a little worse there. If you played this game a lot, either they wouldn't make as many mid-rangers, the shots you want your opponent to take, or the Pacers would make a few more threes in a way, right, that suggests the Pacers actually had a better shot profile and played a decent process game, but they didn't actually finish those plays. And that's the part that matters. They'd be better at actually doing those things, getting the stop, getting the rebound, making the shot, playing the way they want to play instead of, and I think, again, they did some of that, but in the end, it wasn't enough, and they'll have to be better in their next game, which is against the Celtics on Wednesday. We'll be previewing that and a couple more Pacers topics tomorrow. We're going to have more guests soon, I promise. It's been like 4 or 5 episodes by myself in a row. It's a little harder when these games are rapid fire, and there's a million stories to talk about to get somebody in, but I promise there'll be 1 or 2 to close out this week. Thank you guys for listening today. Let me know your thoughts on this game. You can tweet at me at Tony R. East or comment down below if you're watching on YouTube. And of course, I have a question for you guys to answer. I promise if you're on YouTube, I do read those answers. I am interested in what people are thinking. And usually I pick a question that influences what I think about, what fans think about something, which is a convoluted way to explain that, but it is important to me to see those answers. Thank you all a ton for listening. Hope you enjoyed the game and enjoyed today's show. Back tomorrow. Till then, have a great day.